Yeah, I
I
got
get
flirty.
paid Friday. You know what that means? Then I wake up naked and my apple
Flashlight.
hurt.
What?
Go, Joey!
Gonna buy FIFA coins.
Dude!
Yeah,
Shy,
more
that was
people.
amazing! Ignoring that first part of the intro, you too can have the ability to pull off plays like that by using my code at G-Fuel's website, and shout out to Cryonics on Twitter for already doing so. Link in the description for those that would like to support the channel. Thank you. Alright everyone, you guys already know the deal. Today we're going to be doing another weapon set overview video where I take a look at a shit ton of weapons, talk about how good or bad they are, how to get them, and what god rolls you should be looking out for. If you're someone new here and that sounds interesting to you and you want to watch a YouTuber that's completely dedicated to PvE and all the loot inside Destiny, tickle that subscribe button with your pickle. Now today we're going to be taking a look at all 10 of the new playlist weapons inside Season of the Haunted. This includes all 3 from the core playlist, the 2 Nightfall weapons, the 2 from Iron Banner, the Chase Ritual weapon, and with this weekend, 𝗏𝗏𝗡𝗏 finally rotated around, meaning we got the last 2 that we'll be getting for the season. As always, we'll be ranking these from best to worst so I don't waste your time, so let's go ahead and jump into this. Kicking off today's video, we have a weapon that lands itself in at least the top 3 overall for me this season, and that is the new Vanguard playlist bow, the Strident Whistle. This weapon is only the second ever solar legendary bow we've seen in the game, next to Tyranny of Heaven, and although it is second in terms of when it got here, it's definitely first when it comes to a competition between the two. Firstly, we have our usual, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that some of these weapons are going to have absolutely massive perk pools. No worries though, if you guys didn't know, Bungie added a quality of life change that allows us to get multiple perks per column on these playlist weapons by prestiging or aka resetting our reputation at the appropriate vendors in the tower. So if you want to have an easier time getting your god roll, just remember that rep grinding is 100% the play if you want to get more perks on your weapons. Anyways, the quote-unquote normal perk roll that you would normally rock on a bow, especially for in-game content, would be Archer's Tempo and Explosive Head, but as you guys may know by now, Strident has a much tastier roll up its sleeve. Archer's Tempo and Incandescent is without a doubt the god roll you're looking for on this thing. Plenty of solar explosions await you with this god roll, and during Season of the Haunted, we even got some artifact mods that can synergize with your subclass, and this weapon can have its arrows replicate Warmind cells if you can believe that. Incandescent is just such a fun perk on literally every weapon it rolls on, and I'm so glad that we not only got another solar bow, but one that rolls this perk as well. This is definitely my #1 chase this season, and worth every second of your time. Segueing on over from Strident, let's talk about the new ritual weapon we got this season, the Chain of Command. Now, I did an entire weapon review on this bad boy on my last video, so I won't go too in depth with this video, but just know this. Chain of Command is the second ever stasis LMG we've gotten, the only one worth using in my opinion too. It's easily obtainable by leveling up your core playlist vendors, and comes with perks that no other LMG has ever gotten to this point, those being Osmosis and Adaptive Munitions. With the machine gun buff this season, not only is this weapon feeling great like all the others, but it features really good stasis synergy for some nasty builds, as well as has a really great place inside match game content as it rolls both adrenaline and adaptive at the same time. The machine gun buff allows this thing to just shred through any shield regardless of match game or not whenever it has adaptive, and it's the perfect weapon to run as your primary if you're a div user inside GM content. It's one of the most slept on weapons in the game right now, so I had to put it at #2 because I absolutely love it. Moving on from Chain of Command, I bundled both the 3rd and 4th weapons of the video together as they're pretty similar. Of course, I'm going to be talking about the RIPTIDE, which is a rapid fire stasis fusion from the Crucible playlist, and the Burden of Guilt, an adaptive frame stasis fusion from Trials of Osiris. Now, you guys will be seeing some gameplay of Burden specifically because I can't get a good RIPTIDE to save my life, but they're fairly similar like I said. Anyways, starting with RIPTIDE, this is of course a core playlist weapon, so the perk pool is looking a little quirky. However, we do have a lot of things that can work here. For more casual content, you're definitely looking for a role like Compulsive, Lead from Gold, Auto-Loading, or Perpetual combined with Chill Clip. As you can see from the gameplay in the background, Chill Clip is just an absolute blast of a perk to play with, very similar to Incandescent, and I'm always going to recommend it if it rolls on a weapon. For in-game content though, this is a rapid fire frame, which was a huge part of the meta back in Season of the Lost, so if fusions ever see themselves on the rise again, Field Prep or Lead from Gold and Vorpal could be pretty damn gnarly. With it being stasis, it kinda gets a leg up compared to the other rapid fire frames, cause it's super easy to proc Font of Might for damage phases, which definitely makes this weapon pretty special. Anyways, moving on and talking about Burden of Guilt, this weapon is a bit less flexible in the role that you'd want, so I really just recommend Perpetual and 𝗟�61. Super sexy looking weapon, does the stasis thing, has good damage, 𝗵𝗍𝗍, and big recommend. Up next from the Stasis Fusion Duo, let's talk about a primary weapon that I wasn't too keen on to begin with, but definitely grew on me as I started using it, and that's the Hero's Burden Void SMG. This weapon comes from the Iron Banner and is a 900 RPM Void with some pretty decent perks to go along with it. Now, this SMG isn't going to revolutionize the SMG sandbox if you already have a good funnel web, but it's worth noting that almost all the stats across the board on this thing are better comparatively. Unfortunately, the Hero's Burden does fall a bit short in the perk department, and this is kind of where Bungie fumbled the bag on making this a super desirable SMG. It's still pretty great overall though, as it rolls with Feeding Frenzy and Kill Clip, but a little extra variety would have been nice. All in all though, it's still a very good SMG, and if you'd like a change of pace, Hero's Burden is definitely a PvE monster in the right hands. Now, just how Hero's Burden is basically a funnel web with a different look and perks, so too is our next weapon with a different gun. Here we have the 𝗍𝗲𝗄𝗔, which is a rapid fire arc pulse rifle and is basically identical to the 𝗏𝗏𝗡 from Prophecy, like the stats and almost everything. Because of that, and since we haven't had 𝗍rotate in yet for Nightfalls, I'll be using some old gameplay of 𝗏𝗏𝗡 for this segment. Anyways, yeah, the two guns are basically the same except for some minor perk differences, so if you already have a good 𝗏𝗏𝗡, this pulse might be worth skipping. Not for me though, because every roll on the 𝗏𝗏𝗡 that I ever got was pretty ass, so I'll be farming 𝗍𝗲𝗄𝗏 a lot this season in GMs. The perks I'm going for personally are definitely going to be Perpetual and Frenzy, as those will both be passive bonuses to my reload and damage that I'll get by simply existing. Pretty great overall for in-game content, especially if you're like me and really like that frame, but if you have a good 𝗏𝗏𝗡, or maybe even another pulse that's a different frame like Insidious, I wouldn't really consider this pulse a must-have for you. Now, forgive me for not having any gameplay for the next weapon on this list, because I just cannot be asked to go back into that absolute war zone that is known as Trials of Osiris. I went flawless 4 times in the past 2 days, and I have seen too many goblins than I'd want to deal with. Regardless though, here we have the Forgiveness 2-Burr Sidearm, which is basically an arc version of the brass attacks from Season of the Chosen, but with better stats. This weapon has Demo and Subsistence in the first column, with multi-kill clip and Adrenaline in the second. This little cutie might have some quirky Arc 3.0 synergy starting next season, so I might try to grind one out just for that fact alone. Otherwise, it's just a solid sidearm with good perks. Up next from Forgiveness, we have ourselves a hand cannon whose strongest trait is definitely that it looks really good, and that is the Dick Fart Anus. And that is the D.F.A. This weapon drops from the Nightfall playlist, and while it does come with good perks, for example, Perpetual Time Payload, Triple Tap Time Payload, Outlaw Rampage, etc., it still falls short compared to its other kinetic hand cannon brethren. Fatebringer has it outclassed on a damage per shot basis, Judgment has it outclassed by rolling Demo and Time Payload, and Ice Luna has it outclassed by being the current best ad clear hand cannon. So basically that means there really isn't any practical reasoning to warrant farming this thing out, but I'll still be farming it because I love the way it looks and you can't stop me. Moving on from D.F.A, we have ourselves a weapon that stays true to its name, the Dead Weight pellet shotgun from Gambit. This rapid fire shotty might as well be shards on every drop because it would just be dead weight in your inventory. Yes, I know I'm a comedy genius. Now, there's some potential this weapon could be nasty come Arc 3.0 as it has Golden Tricorn, but pellet shotties have been in such a tough spot as of late and it's really hard to warrant using them. This gun might be good with Trench Barrel, assuming that perk ever gets a buff, with the role Field Prep Trench, but right now the best role and use for this thing is probably Field Prep or auto-loading 1-2 punch, you know. I'm really grasping at straws right now to try and find a use for this thing, but I really don't see it having a place in the sandbox, at least for right now. Finally for the video, we come to our number 10 weapon, and hot damn, this thing is hot garbage. Here at number 10, we have the Wizened Rebuke from Iron Banner, or as I like to call it, the Wizened Rebuke. Again, yes, I know, Comedy Gold. It's just horrible right out the get-go. It is just bad. It's got really bad perks, super stinky archetype, garbage origin trait, and its existence is to just annoy you every time you get it from an Iron Engram. I didn't even bother to get gameplay with this fusion despite already owning it because it literally just isn't worth showing off. If you're a PvE main, this weapon doesn't need to be anywhere near your radar whatsoever, and if you play a lot of PvP, maybe you're looking at this thing and like, dude, that shit's like really goated for PvP, but I have no idea. All I know is that for PvE, it's just not worth using. With all that said, ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it for today's video. The long-awaited playlist weapon overview is finally completed as of today, so you guys can stop asking me about it in the comments. On a real note, I hope you all enjoyed the content today, as these videos take a ton of time, grinding, and research to pull off, and if you watched up until this point, thank you so much for supporting the content with your watch time. As always, a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters as well, and shout out to my tier 2s, Homebase, Onrock, Cruntrap, 𝗏𝗡𝗏𝗡, and John, as well as my tier 3s, Neon, 𝘁𝗂'𝗏𝗏, Austin, and Gloomy. And as always, guys, if you guys do want to support me on Patreon, you definitely can, link in the description. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.